everyone. I hope you are doing well. I know that these days you are having a lot of problems staying at home and being bored, but stay tuned and try to just learn some English. My name is Elmira Shah-Qasampur and I'm main course teacher for Birmingham level in Üsküdar University, prep school section. So today's lesson is about modal verbs. Do you remember we have had the same topic some time ago? Modal verbs are the auxiliary verbs. They come with another verb to have a kind of meaning. They are like to be verbs, have or do or things like that. So modal verbs are auxiliary verbs and they should come with another verb. What type of verb is that? Look at the different words that we can use for modal verbs. Look at the picture. Do you know all of these modal verbs? Can, could, must, have to, should, would, will, shall, shan't. Won't, wouldn't, shouldn't, don't have to, mustn't, couldn't, can't. And also we have another one which is ought to. We don't have it on this picture actually. So as you see, we have a lot of modal verbs and they are having different usages. Like you can use them for possibility, you can use them for giving advice, you can use them for different types of things. So what are modal verbs? How do we use modal verbs? Modal verbs are made like this. If you want to use them in positive sentences, we use subject plus modal verb plus infinitive. What is infinitive? Infinitive is a bare verb. We don't have to, we don't have ing, we don't have past tense or s or anything you can think of. So affirmative verb is made like this. She should stay. It is positive. What about negative? How do we make negative modal verbs? We just add not or nt to the modal verb. Subject plus modal plus not plus infinitive. She shouldn't stay. What about the question? It is the same as other types of questions. For example, you have your WH word plus modal plus subject. It is, we use the same format for all of the types of questions. So interrogative is question. Why should she stay? So as you see, we have different types of modal verbs. We can talk about ability, permission, advice, obligation, possibility. We have had them before, like 3 weeks ago. We had the same topic and I discussed permission and possibility. Today's lesson is about obligation and advice. So let's go through ability, permission and possibility very fast, and then we will move on with our the main topic we have today. We can use can and could for ability. David can speak 3 languages. He could speak fluent French when he was 5. And also you can use can, could plus may or may to ask for permission. So can I sit in that chair, please? Could I open the window? May I borrow your dictionary? So after these types of modal verbs, we have possibility. Possibility, which is used for can and could, may and might. It looks nice, but it might be very expensive. Richard may be coming to see us tomorrow. For example, this is a very important thing I want to share with you. as you see, may, be. We don't have am, is, are after may as modal verb. So, today's concern is advice or obligation, which we will go through it. You can look at the examples first, and then we will move on. You should visit your dentist at least twice a year. You should try to lose weight. It is a kind of advice. And what about obligation? Must or have to. So, there is a very important thing I want to talk about while considering must and have to. They can use interchangeably, but the meaning is a bit different. In a spoken language, we normally use have to, and we will go through the differences we have, the slight differences we have, between them. Okay, so about obligation. What is the meaning of obligation? There are some things that are necessary. We use obligation to talk about rules, laws, or the things we need to use. Let's think about it. I must lose weight. There is something from inner thing inside me. I must lose weight. What about have to? For example, your teacher says to you, you have to do your homework until Sunday, which is the normal thing in our level, you know. So it is something external from outside. Someone obliges you to do it, and someone asks you to do it. It is necessary to do it. For example, when I say I must eat healthy food, it means that I need to do that. It is necessary for me. Let's go through the examples. We use must for present. We make the rules, such as I must study well because I need to do it. It is necessary for me. What about have to? We use have to talk about other tenses, such as past or future, and also now, which is one of other different thing between must and have to, which I will explain more later on. Have to talks about another people's rules. You have to be home early. Who says such a thing to you? Of course, your father, for example. You have to be home early. What about we use she instead of you? Think about it. If I want to say she, my sister, my brother, she has to be home early. So, as you see in the picture, study for the exam, you must. Okay, so let's go through the differences we have between must and have to. As I told you, the differences are not that much. Normally, like native speakers don't use must and have to like interchangeably, but you can find the differences in like different examples as you see here. All applicants must take an entrance exam, or all applicants have to take an entrance exam. Here, both of the verbs express necessity. The meaning is the same. It is necessary for both of the applicants to take the exam. So we can use must or have to. There is no choice. The exam is required. They need to do it. It is mandatory. What about examples C and D? 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 What about examples C and D Take a look at the examples. In this section, we can clarify the subtle differences these modal verbs have. I'm looking for Sue. I have to talk to her about our lunch date tomorrow. I can't meet her for lunch because I have to go to a business meeting at 1 o'clock. And the meaning of this sentence is I need to do this or I need to do that. When you use have to here, I need to do such a thing. I need to talk to Sue. What about example D? Where is Sue? I must talk to her right away. I have an urgent message for her. So, as you see, in this example, we have a kind of stronger thing. This is very important. It is very urgent to do such a thing. Because it is a strong word, must, meaning necessity, is a bit rare in conversation. It is usually found in legal or academic writing. So, in everyday statements of necessity, have to is used more commonly than must, as I mentioned before. So, another important thing we need to consider when we are talking about when we are learning a grammatical point is its pronunciation. So, as you see, I have to is pronounced I have to. I have to be home by 8. Have to. We don't say have to, we say have to. She has to go to a meeting tonight. Native speakers normally use it this way. They say have to, has to. And what about have got to? I have got to go now. I have a class in 10 minutes. I have got to go now. I have a class in 10 minutes. Or another example can be, I have to go now. I have a class in 10 minutes. As we see, have got to also express the idea of necessity. G and H have the same meanings. Have got to is informal, and it is used in spoken English. But we use have to for both formal and informal English. As I mentioned, in spoken language, you don't need to say, I have got to go. You can say, I've got to go. Or even you can say, I gotta go now. So I'm repeating it again about the pronunciation. I've gotta go. Or I gotta go. So we normally drop have and we say it in a kind of very easier and it is like flowing in conversation. I gotta do it. Okay, what about past necessity? Past necessity, as I told you before, we use must for present. We don't use must for past or future. Instead, we use have to or has to. For example, I will have to go to work this Sunday. I will have to work this Sunday. Okay? We don't use must for that. I have to. I have got to. I must study tonight. This is for present or future. What about past? The only thing we use for past is I had to. Instead of must, we use I had to study last night, for example. It means I needed to study. It is explaining the past necessity. There is no other past form for must. We can use must for future, for present, but we can't use it for past. So, I want to go through this again, and I want to talk about the application and the things that we can use, the modal verbs we can use. So we have must and have to. Must is used for present or future to talk about something from inside, our inner thing. And have to is mostly external, but in spoken language we normally use have to, and we don't put this much like differences between them. We just try to use them interchangeably, but I mentioned the different forms of them. So let's go through the next slide. We use must when the authority comes from the speaker. We use must when the authority comes from the speaker. It is used in the present and in the future. You must be home by 10 o'clock. You must be home by 10 o'clock. What about have to? We use have to when the authority comes from outside the speaker. From outside the speaker. I have to go to work. She has to go to work. What about past? Past of have to is had to. Past of have to is had to. So, I had to work late at night yesterday. I had to work late at night yesterday. And the question. So, I want to talk about the question form of have to clarify it more for you. We use do or does to make have to question, modal verb question. So, do you have to work late today? What about she? So, normally we have an S. Does she have to work late today? So let's go to the next. So as I told you, for some cases we can use them instead of each other. For example, we can say like you have to come home early, or maybe if you want you can use you must come home early. But the thing is, for the negative they are not used as the same meaning. If you want to say lack of obligation, it is unnecessary to do something, you say you don't have to. Okay? For example, you don't have to work on the weekend. It is not necessary to work on the weekend. You don't have to study hard or do all of the homework because it is not very necessary to do it at this time, for example. But what about must? Must is totally different. I will explain it later on, which is like I mustn't do something. It means it is banned, it is prohibited. So, as I told you before, we use don't have to for no obligation, mustn't something that is prohibited, something which is banned. Okay, now let's look at must and have to summary. When you want to give your opinion, you can use both of them. So we use must and have to for both of them at this case. you have to exercise or you must exercise. What about opinions with urgency? Opinions which are very important. And as I told you, there is a kind of there is more obligation for that. You must exercise. You don't use have to in this case. What about obligation from outside? Mostly from outside. As I told you, we use obligation for both of them. But when it is from outside, from other people's rules, we use have to or has to. Jane has to work this weekend. So, there is something that I want to add here. Mostly for the rules that are made by government or instructions and so on, you use must instead of have to. You must be silent. You must fasten your seatbelt. Okay, let's move on. There is a kind of quote here. You don't have to like everyone. Everyone doesn't have to like you. It means it is not necessary. It is not obligatory. So just look at this slide. Things you must do to make you happy. Things you must do to make you happy. For example, I must do yoga. I must meet my friends, which I don't do these days because I'm not doing these days because of quarantine and because of coronavirus. What's wrong? I'm not happy. You don't have to be happy. Really? That's great. So you don't have to means it is not necessary, which is very important thing for this section. So let's move on. We are done with have to and must. Let's move on to mustn't and can't. So as I told you before, you can use haven't, don't have to talk about lack of obligation. What about mustn't? We use mustn't to talk about prohibition, something that is banned. It is banned to, for example, smoke in a classroom. You mustn't smoke in classroom. Okay? Mustn't or can't can be used interchangeably. You mustn't smoke in the building. You can't take photographs in this museum because it is banned, it is forbidden. So, prohibition, forbidden, and not allowed. For these, we use these two modal verbs to talk about prohibition, forbidden things, and some things that are not allowed. Okay? Like as you see in this slide, when you go to a museum, you have such a picture. No cameras allowed. You can't take photographs here. You can't take photographs here. As I mentioned before, in pronunciation for can't, we use a, long a. You can't take photographs here. Okay. So we are, let's change our topic, which is about obligation. Now we want to give advice. For giving advice, we use should and ought to. The government should protect people in need. So, when do we use advice? We use advice to talk about the things, for example, your friends need a kind of help. Okay? So, you advise. Or sometimes you use, and the other usage of should and ought to is for suggestion. Okay, the government should protect people in need. It is cold in here. You ought to turn on the heating. You ought to turn on the heating. You shouldn't tell anybody about this. It is a secret. So, to give advice, we use should, ought to, and had better. I have just added had better here to just give you more clue about that. So, you use had better to give a strong warning. Something bad or negative will happen otherwise. Had better not is the negative form. For example, you'd better study. If you don't study, you fail the exam. So, as you see, it has consequence. What about should and ought to? The second point, the second hint. Should or ought to is used to give advice. They have similar meanings, but in questions and negative sentences, we use should. We use should have or ought to express advice on a past situation. For questions, you could use shall. It is similar to should. So, we should cook for mom. She shouldn't cook when she is sick. Shall we go? Yes. Let's get going. Shall I go? Yes. You should get going. So, we can use shall in questions too. So, another thing I want to add here is the negative form. We use we shouldn't, should not. What about ought to? How do we use ought to in this case when you want to use not? Think about it. We ought not to. Okay? We shouldn't go. We ought not to go. So, let's move on. Should I stay or should I go? This is a kind of witty thing here. Should I go or should I stay? Okay, so let's look at more examples. When we talk about obligation, no obligation, necessity, no necessity. For obligation, as I mentioned before, we use must and have to. And also you can use should and ought to, which is a bit less stronger. Just go through the examples. This is a kind of repetition for you. You must eat less. I'm not talking about the past part because it will be taught to you in future, so I will not talk about that part, but you'd better look at that if you want to. You must eat less. I must do some work. You mustn't smoke. I have to return the book now. You should wear a seatbelt. You ought to apologize. What about no obligation? We use we don't have to for no obligation. We don't have to wear a tie. It is something that you can be chicer with it. What about necessity? Something is necessary. So it is necessity. They must have clean water. We have to get some sleep. I've got to find a job. And I have added two other things. I need new glasses and we need to book in advance. It means reserve here. We need to reserve the ticket in advance. It means before. So I have added these two things as a kind of necessity. And for no necessity, we use don't have to, needn't, and don't need to. Needn't is used for past and don't need to is used for present simple. We don't have to wear a tie. We needn't book in advance, which is reserved here, and we don't need to book in advance, which it is talking about. We don't need to book the ticket of the concert in advance. We can get it at the door. So I'm just going through these very fast. I suggest that you get a good lawyer. You should get a good lawyer. I suggest you is giving it a kind of advice. What about question number 2? A university degree isn't necessary for that job. You don't have to have a university degree for that job. It means it is not necessary. My father is obligated to pick you up. Obligated is a kind of obligatory thing. So my father has to pick you up. Eating is forbidden in class. It is forbidden. You mustn't eat in class. By the way, I will share this this PowerPoint with your teachers, and you can get access to that and go through the examples one by one. Okay, you can use your imagination, think about these situations, and create a sentence using modals. We are going to Paris for a weekend. Make suggestions about the things to do. For example, you are going to Paris for a weekend. You ask for suggestion from your friend, and your friend says, you should visit Eiffel Tower. You should visit Louvre Museum. You should take a lot of pictures, because you are giving suggestions. So you can go through numbers 2, 3, 4, and you can also send them to your teachers to find out your possible problems. Okay, so I hope you have enjoyed this lesson. I tried to talk about obligation in modal verbs in this lesson, and I have just added some links for your homework. I hope you will use them, and if you have any further questions, you can get back to your teachers, and you can enjoy this time with us during coronavirus. Take care of yourselves, stay home, learn English, and stay safe. Have a good day.